The following is a presentation of Muddy River News.
I'm David Adam. I'm the editor of Muddy River News, and I am in the Menard Correctional Center in Chester, Illinois. We are in a conference room in the prison, and I am here to talk with Tim Bliefnick.
Morning.
Morning. Why'd you want to do this?
You know, the day of when the police came to my house, I had wanted to talk to the police then and was told not to. During the trial, I had wanted to testify on my own behalf and was told not to. Mm-hmm. So the only side of this story, the only information that people have gotten is the other side. And I've learned through this that life is unexpected, and there's no saying that I couldn't have a heart attack tomorrow and die. And I wanted to at least be able to tell the truth, to tell what I know, what I feel. I don't know. It's almost like I haven't been able to speak on my own behalf, and I need to.
Well, let's get right to the first question.
Right.
Did you kill your wife?
I did not. No. Never during our divorce, during anything, had I ever wished her harm, anything negative. People would make jokes about things happening to her, and I told them, I said, I don't want to hear that. That's not what this is about. This is just about a divorce. Like, it's not that serious. I don't know. It just, for all this to happen was just stunning to me as well as everybody else. But no, I did not kill Becky. I did not murder her.
Let's go back a few years. How'd you two meet? I know that you met as students at Quincy University, but right. Talk about how you two met and how the beginning of your life started.
We met at Quincy University, and at the time I couldn't get the time of day from her. I tried, but apparently I just wasn't what she was looking for.
Sure.
So after college, I was working for a local company and had slimmed down, cut my hair, right, was working, so I was more of a professional look. And we actually found each other on the old social media MySpace. Found out she was living in Decatur, and I made up a story about having to stop by Decatur on my way home to Chicago from St. Louis, which is not on the way. And that was how we first met after college. It was several years. Mm-hmm. And then we just started dating long distance then. I lived in Chicago with my brother, and to really condense it down, after a while, she ended up moving up to Chicago. She got a transfer from her job to be able to work up there, and then I got a promotion and moved to Indiana, and she came with me, and that was where we got engaged and married, and then moved back to Quincy and all that stuff.
So, I mean, my notes I had here that you lived in Chicago, you lived in Fort Wayne, came back to Quincy shortly after your first son was born, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. What was your relationship? Talk about what life was like living together and becoming parents.
You know, early on, it was pretty good. There were some things I look back on that I wish maybe I had done differently or that I had handled differently in terms of our communication and the things we talked about and where our life went. But I would say for the most part, it was pretty good. Now, before we got married, we had this whole financial plan laid out, and we were both going to work. And even if we had kids, she was going to continue working. And then when we got married, kind of unexpectedly, we got pregnant right away. Mm-hmm. We thought it was probably going to take a while, whatever, but it was immediate. Mm-hmm. And then she ended up getting fired from her job. And at that point, kind of sprung on me that her dream had always been to be a stay-at-home mom, which was news to me because we had never really talked about that, mm-hmm. but we were going to be fine, money-wise, all that. So I said, you know what? Yeah, great. Let's do that. And it was pretty good. So she was a stay-at-home mom. We were in Indiana, so we didn't have a support network really of friends and family that were close by, but we made do. And so when the opportunity came to move back to Quincy, we thought this will be great. Her parents live there. My parents are closer. We've got friends that are there. It'll be good. So we did, and again, everything kind of progressed fine.
So was there a point Can you name a point where the relationship started to sour?
We had a miscarriage. We actually had two, but the first one we had, I remember I was in Chicago and we were talking in the morning, she called me in the morning, and it was a very blunt, she just said, I had a miscarriage. And I'm caught off guard by this because it wasn't anything that I was expecting. And she said, I don't want to talk about it, I don't want you to tell anybody, just I wanted to let you know, and hung up the phone. Okay, so I called her back and I said, well, look, I can come home. She goes, don't come home. So I was kind of torn, and I told one of my coworkers, I said, yeah, she had a miscarriage. And just told me this morning, he goes, you need to go home. I was like, I thought I did, but she told me not to. He goes, you need to go home. And so I did what I had to do to get everything taken care of work-wise at the conference, to arrange other meetings, whatever, and I started driving home. And on the way home, I called one of her friends, a good friend of hers, and told her what had happened, because I was concerned about Becky. And her friend went over there and spent some time with her, whatever. By the time I finally got home, that drive is 5 hours or whatever it is. I walk in the door and she was furious with me. Why did you tell her? Why did you bring this up? Now people are gonna know. Almost like she felt it was her fault. So trying to navigate that, I don't know that she ever got past that point of thinking it was her fault. And this anger just started to make itself known. It started to infect her behavior, how she treated me, how she treated maybe a year at the time, a year old. I thought, okay, this is a horrible thing. She's very upset. This is gonna pass. And it didn't. And it just progressively got worse. And I had asked her on several different occasions to go see a counselor, go talk to somebody, just to be able to get some of these feelings out, because I would try to ask her about it, and she just would clam up. It bothered me a lot, bothered her dad a lot. I talked to my parents about it because my mom had had a miscarriage years and years ago. That was when it all kind of started, because we had another one several years later. We obviously had between there and then, but it just never got any better. The anger, the outbursts, it was, her brother-in-law at one time said, boy, her fuse has gotten really short in how she deals with the kids. And it went from, at the beginning, just things would bother her that had never bothered her before. She would get angry at the boys for things that I didn't understand why she was angry about. And it escalated over the years to yelling, even to physical issues, physical abuse that would happen with the kids, and then me. And so it went on.
I was going to say, when you did the interview with Erin Moriarty, she asked you about abuse.
Right.
And you said back to her, she wasn't the one who was emotionally abused.
She claimed that she was emotionally abused through our divorce proceedings, which wasn't the case. I said there are things that I wish I had done differently. I wish I had been more adamant, more direct about her needing to get help. I tried to do what I could to fix the problem. I tried to take things off her plate. I tried to do what I could, because I thought, well, maybe if there's less stress in her life, less things that are going to irritate her or make her angry, that this would improve. And I just kept doing that for years, and it just never got better. It was almost like I was enabling the behavior.
Is that why you got divorced?
Yeah. If you look on the paperwork, I went with the canned ham, irreconcilable differences, but I was afraid to list abuse as the reason, because of what I'd seen out of her up to this point. But also, I didn't have any desire to embarrass her or ruin her life, or I hoped that the divorce would almost kind of drive home the point that this was a problem, and that she would recognize the behavior was a problem and do something about it. You know, in April of 2019, we were going on a trip to Mexico with some friends. And so my mom came up to watch the kids, and her dad helped. My mom tells me later that her dad wrote her a 3-page letter, wrote Becky a 3-page letter. I never got to read it, and she obviously didn't let me read it. But in the letter, one of the things that my mom had said was that her own dad described her treatment of our kids as appalling. And we tried to subpoena that letter in the divorce proceedings, but they would never turn it over. So I tried to raise these issues to the GAL in the divorce about the abuse and...
And the GAL being the guardian ad litem.
Correct, right. And the kids, I think, were afraid to tell him because they were still with her half the time. One of the boys even, while he was over at my house, said, "Man, I wish we could stay here more with you than we go to the other house." And I never tried to influence the kids in the divorce. I did everything I could to keep them out of it so that I wasn't going to use them as a weapon to try and, I don't know, to try and hurt her. That wasn't my objective. But when he said that, I said, "Well, look, we're going to meet with the GAL here soon. If that's the way you feel, you need to tell him that. You need to tell him that that's how you feel because he can have an impact on what happens." And he says, "Oh, no." He says, "Do you know how mad Mommy would get if she found out I told him?" And I didn't know what to do. It broke my heart to hear him say that. But I can't do anything about it other than just try to provide a home for them where they don't feel like that.
Well, you and Becky started the process of the divorce in February of 21. And
Not necessarily.
Really, how far back did it go?
I had told her in June or July of 2020 when I wanted to get a divorce.
So it had been going on for, almost 6-9 months before maybe the actual paperwork had been filed?
Yeah, I didn't file right away. That's one of the things I wish I had done because I still thought we could make this work. Like, contrary to everything, all of my experience up to that point, I still thought we can fix this because I didn't want to get divorced, but it had just gotten too bad. She begged me not to, said she was willing to do whatever it took to change, to work on these problems, which is all I wanted. It just never did.
So in court, Josh Jones said that the two of you didn't agree on anything, that it was a pretty contentious divorce.
Yeah, it was.
How would you describe those 2 years where you were going through the process? I mean, when did you leave and leave the home on Kentucky Road?
So it was late September, early October of 2020 where I told her, I said, "Look, you're not willing to make this work. We're getting divorced." And I was going to file immediately. And she asked me not to file until after until January. I understand now that she was trying to organize some things on her end that were going to be detrimental to me, which was why she asked me to delay. Didn't know that at the time, so I said, "Okay, look, don't want to do that for the holidays, then fine, I'll wait." And so I moved out of the house. I think I filed the divorce, because I'm the one that filed. I think I filed it in maybe early January was when the paperwork was actually filed, and then I moved out of the house the last week of January, I think.
Were you guys close to a settlement? I mean, you were, I couldn't remember, you were within days of it going to trial, right?
I had tried to negotiate, try to settle, whatever, before we even went into court the first time. And she just didn't want to do that. And, things I say in here, I understand people aren't going to want to believe because they just think I'm making it up or I'm trying to make her look bad, which is not the case. It's just what actually happened. And when I had tried to negotiate with her and just try to split things up and do whatever, and she told me, no, I need to go to court to see how much money I can get. Like, she just told me that to my face. After that point, it was one thing after another that she could do to drag the proceedings on, because there was no financial incentive for her to end the divorce. You know, I think the tally was I was paying, between having to pay 2/3 of the mortgage for the Kentucky Roadhouse, plus alimony and child support, plus all of the things that I was paying for the kids, I want to say it was anywhere between $5,500 to $6,000 a month that I was paying out. So she was able to work part-time because she changed her hours after we separated, which I still don't understand why that was allowed to stand. But so she was able to work part-time, was getting all of this financial support. Why would she want to stop that? So she would continue to raise issues that were, one was about text messages that you could almost tell when we were coming up to a hearing, something would get filed by her attorney. Oh, we need to look at this. And so when we would get into court, that issue was, the judge would say, well, we need to look at this issue, and now we're going to continue this for whatever it was, 3 or 4 months. And that just kept happening over and over. You know, if she was just doing that with the money stuff, it wouldn't have even been that bad. But the things that were happening with the kids was worse. And that was what made it really bad, because when we first separated, before I moved out of the house, we had come to an agreement on a couple things that I didn't want to leave just in the air. One of them was we were going to split time with the kids evenly. When I left the house, they were going to spend half the time in my house, half the time at her house, and we were going to work that out. And then she had also agreed to pay the majority of the mortgage for the house on Kentucky Road. When I moved out, she didn't honor the agreement we had made. So she would only let the kids come to my house on the weekend, and only if she got to be there with them, which I didn't want. She refused to pay anything for the house. I mean, bills, kids' medical, all this stuff. So it just all got dumped on me. But with the kids only getting to spend the weekends with me, you know, I started to realize that she was telling them things to, you know, one of the boys at one point said, why do I feel like mommy says things to us to make us hate you? And I said, I don't know, man. I don't know. And so I don't have any way to fight that. You know, I didn't argue with the kids. It wasn't like I said, well, that's a lie, and you can't believe her, and well, she's doing this. I didn't say any of that to them. I just said, I don't know, son. I said, you're just going to have to make your own decision and see where it goes. And so, again, I just tried to keep them out of it as much as possible, because it was hard enough. I didn't want to make it harder on them by trying to pit them against her. That's not what was supposed to happen.
Let's talk about February 23rd.
Okay.
Where were you?
Was February 23rd Wednesday or Thursday? Was that the day that she was found, or was that?
I would say that the 23rd was the. Let's get rid of the dates and let's just go with where were you on the night that she was killed?
I was home. I was home with the kids.
What'd you guys do?
Pretty normal night. I had actually been sick since like Sunday morning early. And at first I thought, I have a cold, right? Head, congested, whatever. And it got progressively worse over that week. And all 3 of the boys the month prior had ended up with the same illness. So it just ended up being my turn. So it was pretty normal. Kids went to school, picked them up. I think we were done with basketball at that time. So I don't think there was anything extracurricular wise, but there's nothing noteworthy, I guess, as far as what we did. Now, the day of, got up, took them to school, So I wasn't supposed to have them Wednesday night. Normally, I would have them Tuesday night, and then she would pick them up from school on Wednesday, and they would be with her Wednesday, Thursday, and then we would alternate weekends. But she had sent me a message on, I think it was Tuesday, saying that she was sick, and asked if I could keep the boys an extra night. I said, yeah, no problem, fine, I can do that. I did not realize that she was having, I guess, cosmetic surgery, and she wasn't really sick. I thought, she's sick. So I was feeling pretty bad, like just physically, and I hadn't necessarily wanted to keep the kids an extra night because I was feeling bad, but again, that idea when she was sick and was stressed out because of it, it was just, it wasn't a good situation. So I agreed to keep them. So that morning after I dropped them off, so class had something going on. And so a few weeks prior to that, maybe a week or 2 weeks prior to that, that basketball hoop, that whatever, the basketball hoop that I took to my dad's, I had given it to use in his class for whatever they were doing. So that basketball hoop had been in his teacher's classroom for a few weeks. They were done with it, so that morning when I dropped them off, I grabbed it out of the classroom, and then when I left the school, I drove it over to my dad's house and dropped it off. So that basketball hoop, that was a basketball hoop that my parents had had for 20 years. And he had it in his basement. He had moved it over. He had moved it with some other stuff because he thought, you know, if the kids come over, they'll like to use the basketball hoop or whatever. So that morning, class was done with the basketball hoop. I grab it, take it over to his house, drop it off. I'm there for 15 minutes, and then I leave. Now, before I left the school, we were using Our Family Wizard to message each other. I had requested that because I would get some pretty nasty strings of text messages, and so this Our Family Wizard allowed the GAL access to see all the communication. So after I dropped the kids off, grabbed the hoop, I sent her a message and said, I think hadn't been feeling well the night before, so I told her he had a little bit of a cough. I gave him some children's Tylenol, and there was some other stuff in there about the boys, maybe things that they had in their backpacks at school or things that they would need or whatever. And at the end of it, I said, look, if you're still not feeling well, tell me, and I'll take the kids again, but you got to let me know so I can pick them up from school and arrange that. Drove over, dropped the basketball hoop off. So then as I'm driving home, I called, what was the guy's name? I owned a mobile home park with a business partner of mine, and I had called a guy I asked him if he was free on the weekend because I wanted to get a quote to demolish one of the mobile homes. And he says, well, can you just go out there now? I didn't want to go. I felt terrible. And so I said, yeah, that's fine. So I ran home, got dressed, met him out there, walked through the mobile home. He kind of gave me some information, whatever, and then I left there. When I got home again, I saw I hadn't gotten a response from her on the Our Family Wizard, so I sent her another message that said, hey, are you feeling well? Are you still sick? What's going on? Can you please just let me know what's happening so that way I know what needs to happen with the kids? Then I had a meeting with my attorney, Casey Schnock, for the divorce, because the divorce proceedings were going to start the next week. And we talked about whatever, like leading into the final divorce proceedings was the most confident I had felt during the divorce in 2 years. So the meeting with her was just to kind of button up some things, talk about what we were going to do next week, how that was going to work out, things we were going to do and work on, yada, yada, yada. So I left there. And I checked my messages again and still hadn't seen anything from her. And this was probably 2 hours later. So finally sent her another message and I said, look, I don't know if this is a game, something like that. I don't know if you're sick or whatever, but I haven't heard from you. I'm going to pick up the kids. I'm going to call the school and pick up the kids. If you're well enough and you want to get them, that's fine, but you need to call the school or you need to tell me what's going on. So then I called the school and had told them, can you tell the boys not to walk home? I'm going to come pick them up. And they said,
And for people who don't know, the school that they attended was what, about 3 blocks from the Kentucky Road home?
yeah, if that. Yeah, it was close. So they said, fine, no big deal. So then I went home, and then it was when it came time to pick up the kids. You know, in the trial, they made it seem like my showing up early to the school was an abnormality, that was something that never happened before. And it wasn't true. Every time for about the previous year, it was my turn to pick up the kids at school, I would show up 30 to 45 minutes early because there were 2 moms that would also show up early, and we would all park next to each other and we would just talk. So when I showed up early to pick the boys up from school, that was just what I did. And I parked next to the moms again, and we were talking, and it was normal. Everything was normal. So got the kids, went home, and then I tried to call her dad. And so I called him. He didn't answer right. I don't remember if he didn't answer right, or maybe he did answer, but we talked on the phone. There was another thing in the trial. He said we didn't. But I talked to him. I said, look, I haven't gotten a hold of Becky all day. Have you talked to her? Do you know what's going on? I just need to find out what's going on with the kids. And he said, no, I haven't heard from her either. He said, I'm going to go over to the house and check on her. I said, okay, just let me know what's going on. And then after he did, that was when everything just went to hell.
Right. We talked briefly about the basketball hoop.
Right.
And I want to ask you about the relationship between Becky and your dad, because there was apparently an order that was in place that prevented unsupervised visits.
Correct.
But with your dad and the boys. What was the relationship like between your dad and the boys, and your dad and your wife?
Up until this divorce, the relationship between him and Becky was outstanding. And the relationship between him and the boys was always good, you know. So allegations were made against my dad that I found out about in 2017. And it was a really tough period to hear these things and then to try and reconcile it with my previous 35 years of knowing him as my father. And I will say this, that as my father, he was, I don't know that I could have asked for a better one. The support, the help, the understanding, everything. He was really good and had always been there as a grandfather to our sons. So there were a lot of conversations that were had between me, my brothers, my parents, but the thing is Becky was involved in all those conversations. So she was there, and that was, we had talked a little bit about, the only reason in the divorce proceedings that I had brought up this, or wanted to try and fight this idea of supervised visits for my dad, was because she claimed in the trial proceedings that she had no knowledge of these allegations, which wasn't true, and was the basis of the judge granting this no unsupervised contact with him. I didn't really expect that to be overturned in the divorce proceedings. My main objective was to have people that were involved in the conversations testify to the fact that Becky was there and she knew about it and had been lying in our divorce proceedings. I can't think of any other reason than just to hurt me and hurt my dad. My parents got divorced in, maybe it was 2019. I don't remember exactly. Maybe it was before that, it doesn't matter. But Dad was living by himself and he was still working, and it was kind of, there was no reason for him to be working, and he was just kind of alone by himself where he was. And so Becky was the one that brought up the idea. She goes, well, what if he moves over to Quincy? I said, well, are you okay with that? Is that something that you want? She said, oh yeah, it'll be great. He'll be here to help. He can help watch the kids. He can spend time with them. He can babysit if we want to go out, whatever. And then that house came available for sale just down the road from the Kentucky Road one, and she was the one who was really instrumental in getting him into that house. So when he moved in, it was great. He would come down and mow our lawn. We would drop the kids off at his house and go out to dinner, or just the kids would go down there on their own and just play down there because Dad still had some old toys. Like he had some old trucks of his from years ago, and the kids loved to play with them because we'd never seen anything like that before. But when we got into the divorce proceedings, she started to attack him. Started to attack him about these allegations and claimed that she didn't know anything about him. And then she started contacting family members of mine and getting them to testify against him. And it was a real mess.
I want to ask you about the day of the funeral. You attended, you were in the back of the church. The boys sat in the front of the church with Becky's family. What do you remember about that day?
Bits and pieces. I mean, it's almost like it wasn't, not that it wasn't happening. It's almost like I was watching it, like watching myself watching it. I just couldn't believe we were sitting there and going through this experience. I remember getting up and speaking at the funeral, and he had wanted to write some things down, and I tried to help him with it ahead of time. And he was very, he was very assertive that what he wrote was what he wanted to read. I said, okay, bud, if you're going to speak, it's your thing, whatever. But then, I don't know, I guess he talked to some of her family members when they got there and changed some of the stuff he wrote. But I was proud of him for what he did, because that's, he was 10 years old, to get up there in front of a group and speak like that. I remember the people walking by. I remember just feeling deflated, heavy, sad. I don't know. It's one of those situations, I don't know the right words to use for it. It was, in spite of the struggles that Becky and I had during our divorce, we had kids together. And to be sitting there with her casket up at the front and realizing that she's gone was, it was really hard to deal with.
The police department searched your home. I believe it was on the first. They stopped your vehicle out in the middle of Hampshire, and then you were arrested on March the 13th. Did you always know from the moment you learned about Becky that you would become a suspect?
It was almost like I felt that it was inevitable, because it wasn't like they were just going to gloss over the fact that our divorce was contentious. I had hoped that they would realize it wasn't me and would shift their attention elsewhere to where it needed to go, but it just seemed like from day one, it was on me. And I still wish I had gone and talked with the police that first day when they came to my house. But, I had called another attorney because I realized I didn't have Casey's cell phone number. And so I called another attorney to try and see if he had it. And he said, "What's going on?" And I told him that the police were on their way over to my house because something had happened and they wanted to ask me questions or whatever. And he almost shouted in the phone, "Don't talk to them without Casey there." I went, okay, I guess. And was trying to get a hold of Casey. And I still thought, even after that day, I asked Casey the next day, I said, "When are we going to go talk to the police?" And she said, "We're not going to do that."
You regret that?
I do, yeah. Because it was almost like by not doing that, people assumed I had something to hide. And even her dad, a few days later, said, because he called me about something regarding the funeral, and he got mad on the phone. He said, "Why wouldn't you talk to the police instead of just lawyering up?" And I said, "It wasn't my idea." I said, "I'd still go talk to him, but my lawyer's telling me not to." Can't change that now.
Let's talk a little bit about the case now. Did you know anything about, there were some things that happened kind of outside of the case that were discussed during the appeal process, and one of them was the apparent conflict between Josh Jones and Judge Bob Adrian. Did you know anything about that case and what had gone on with that at all?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I have found through going through this process and then being in here that you don't really know about the legal process until you go through it. I had never been told about the issue with Adrian and Josh Jones and the potential conflict there. I didn't like Adrian as a judge anyway because he was the judge in the first half of our divorce, and then he was removed. That was when he got in trouble and removed from a bunch of whatever, and he was removed from our divorce. Some of the things that he ruled on when we were going through our divorce, I didn't agree with at all. But I was convinced otherwise that we should keep Adrian because of, I'll just say, a relationship that actually had no bearing on the trial. If I had known about the other thing with him and Josh, I would have been adamant about not having him on there because there's just, one of the, it was hard for me to not believe that he didn't have a bias towards Josh because Josh was going to end up testifying against him in this whole judicial inquiry thing that he was going through. It's one of those things I can't change, but I'm upset about it because it just shouldn't have happened.
As part of the investigation, the Illinois State Police found, I believe it was 27 casings in your home in the basement, right?
Correct.
That matched 8 of the ones that were found in the Kentucky Road home. Does that
I believe
match
that's
up?
correct, yeah.
That's pretty damning.
It was surprising. It was surprising. It just, it's, that's the thing I haven't been able to figure out because all of that, they were in the basement with all of my other ammunition.
And you did a lot of shooting,
Right.
correct?
Correct. I hadn't shot a gun since 2019, probably since she went to work weekends in the ER. I used to go on the weekends, but I hadn't been since then. So all of that ammunition, everything that was in boxes down there was stuff that had been moved from the Kentucky Roadhouse. And I had put it in the basement and then hadn't really messed with it for however many years it was.
Were those 27 shells that were found in the basement part of that move?
Yeah. Yeah. They had to have been. Because again, I hadn't shot a gun since 2019. It's hard for me to figure that out because the other issue that they brought up in court was that there were supposedly 2 missing guns, right? Mm-hmm. So one of them was a gun that I had purchased. I bought it, no question, but it was a gift I gave to somebody else who still had it in their possession. So it wasn't missing. And one of the things I don't understand is that I had told my attorney about it. And I said, have the gun, go get the gun, have it tested. The state police will be able to test those and find out that that's not the gun. I don't know why that never happened. The other gun that they claim was missing, it was missing, but it had been missing since 2020. It hadn't been in my possession. I hadn't seen the gun since that point.
Was that a 9mm gun?
Yeah, it was. It was the CZ75. And I know that gun had been missing since then because I was the one that got rid of it.
How'd you get rid of it?
I dismantled it and threw it into the river. And, I said in September or October was when I finally realized we were going to get divorced in 2020. I had been under COVID quarantine, I think the first week of September. And it just wasn't good. I'm supposed to be isolated, so I spent all that time in my office. But Becky and the kids were home too because they had tested negative. And I just don't know what it was, but it seemed like everything that week just set her off. it was everything. You know, I'm not supposed to have any contact with anybody, so I don't infect them. And I had to come out of my office almost several times a day to try and stop the yelling and the screaming and at the kids, and just, it was when I realized, like, it's not going to change. After all these years, this is not going to change. After that point, this would have been towards the end of September, I grabbed that gun, my wedding ring, and some pictures and notes. And I drove down to the river, and it was a childish thing to do, but I was upset, sad, angry. Dismantled the gun, threw it in, threw my wedding ring in, and burnt those pictures and notes. And that's where that gun's been ever since. And I don't own any other ones, so I don't know.
Let's talk about the searches on the computer.
Right.
For those who don't know about what those were, on apparently the search history on your computer, how to use a homemade gun silencer, police response times, how to use a crowbar to open a door, how to wash gunpowder off your hands.
Right.
Did you search for that information?
I would say probably most of them I did.
When did you do this, and why did you do it?
Oh boy. The gunpowder one was after I found out about after she had died, because when the police came to my house, I had to stand outside the whole time, and at one point I wanted to go to the bathroom, and an officer had to go in there with me. So I went to the bathroom. He's watching me the whole time. I go to wash my hands, and he goes, "Don't do that." I said, "Okay." And so when he said that, I figured that they were going to be looking for something. I don't know whether it was DNA or blood or gunpowder or something, which was why they didn't want me to wash my hands. But I had always thought that you had to use some sort of chemical to wash gunpowder residue off your hands. So I looked that up because I didn't want to inadvertently wash my hands with something that would ruin the evidence or lack of evidence, but they never swabbed my hands. I thought they were going to do it that night. So in the next 2 or 3 days, whatever it was, that was when I tried to find that out. Because I didn't want them to accuse me of trying to get rid of evidence when I thought it had to be some chemical to wash gunpowder residue off your hands. I didn't know you could do it with soap.
What about the other searches?
Oh boy. Police response time. Becky used to stalk my house. I had a big picture window where my office was in the front of the house. And when she would go to work at the hospital, I would see her car drive by my house. She could have taken Main Street or she could have taken Broadway to get to the hospital, but she always drove by my house. And I started to realize that she would drive around the block and drive past my house again. So when I looked up the police response time, I was thinking, man, maybe sometime I can catch her doing this if the police can get here quick enough. But I don't know, there was never an answer to that, so I never tried to call them on it because I just thought they wouldn't get there quick enough by the time I make the call.
What about the searches for the vehicle information numbers and the license plates?
No, I did those. Now the thing is I had that license plate number from the fall of 2022. One of the days I had to pick up the boys up from school, one of them needed a practice jersey or medication or something. So when I picked them up from school, they didn't have it. I sent her a message and said, I need to go by the house because the boys need XYZ, whatever it is. So she replies back, fine, but you are not allowed to go in the house. You are not allowed to, whatever, leave the car. I said, fine. I said, no, I wouldn't go in the house anyway. So we drive over there, and I go to pull into just the very first part of the driveway because the grass was muddy. And as I do that, a truck starts backing up. It's a grayish green, whatever it was, Toyota. And I thought, well, that's odd. So I backed out, pulled on the street, and the boys go, well, do you know who that is? I said, I don't. I said, do you boys? And they said, no. So when it drove out of there, I wrote the license plate number down because I thought it was a contractor. So I thought she was having work done to the house and trying to hide it in the court proceedings. That night that they pulled up those searches, or that night that they brought up in court about looking at those vehicular searches, it wasn't the first time I'd done that. Again, I thought it was a contractor's truck. So I was trying to find out if it belonged to a company or a contractor I knew or something. And that was why I was looking it up. The reason I was up that night is because I had eaten too much candy. Because we had made Valentine's Day, we had made Valentines for the boys' classes, and we had a bag of dark chocolate, and I really can't resist, and I ate too much of it. And that was why I was even up at that point. And I wish I hadn't been.
What did you know about Becky's relationship with Ted Johnson? Had you ever met him?
No, I didn't know him. Her relationship was a weird thing in the fact that people thought I wanted to know. People would tell me about it, and I would just, I don't care. I really don't. But it was like they kept wanting to bring it up to me. I didn't know the guy's name, didn't know who he was, because I would try to shut down the conversations. I didn't care that she had a boyfriend. You know, I was the one that divorced her, so it's not like I had some lingering regret about wanting to still have a relationship with her. I thought, great, she's got a boyfriend. It'll take her attention away from me and this divorce and everything else, and that was it. I didn't care. So when he walked into the courtroom, that was the first time I'd ever seen the guy.
During the court proceedings, there was a text message that was brought up that Becky apparently sent to her sister that said, if something ever happens to me, please make sure the number one person of interest is Tim, because that is who would do something to me. Why do you think she would write that?
I have no idea. And I don't know, maybe that's a generic response, but I really don't. Because I never threatened her. Through electronic means, like no messages, no nothing. Physically, I'd never threatened her. I'd never done anything that would warrant that kind of message. So I had found out during the divorce that she had told people that I had an affair while we were married. That I was a deadbeat dad, that I wasn't financially supporting her or the boys, and that she was afraid of me. I tried to think of anything that I might have done which would have given her that reason to feel that way, and I can't come up with anything. When people would mention it to me about, oh yeah, she says she's afraid of you. And I said, well, did she say why? And they said, well, no. It was always a generic, she's afraid of me, but there was no reason why. And so I don't know if it was an attempt to spread more rumors, ruin my reputation. I don't understand it. I really don't.
There were several other people who made comments. They all came and testified, and that was another big contentious point of the appeals process, right, were the hearsay comments that were allowed. Did you ever meet any of those people who testified?
Some of them, yeah. There were some that I didn't, that Becky worked with or whomever, but some of them, Sheila Gervais, Christine, I don't remember what her married name is now, but she was pregnant. She was the witness that was pregnant. And there was another one that I can think of off the top of my head, that I had known them, had spent time with them, had considered them friends. Even going through this, I would message them on Facebook or whatever on birthdays, or something good happened. Hey, congratulations, whatever. I didn't know that the whole time Becky was, talking bad about me to them. Like, it was kind of embarrassing to find that out after the fact. But no, like her nurse coworkers and stuff, I really didn't know, had never met.
How damaging do you think those comments were to your case?
It was, I think that they were pretty damaging because they march out all these people who say that, oh yeah, she was scared of him, she felt threatened by him, she thought that he was going to do something, whatever, without any foundation. It's not to say that, it's not like she told people, oh, well, he broke out a window in my car and that's why I'm afraid of him, or he's whatever. It was always just a generic, I'm afraid of him. But, it's like I was the one that filed for an order of protection against her. And then she filed one that was retaliatory. And even my attorney at the time reading it goes, this is kind of ridiculous. I was still upset that the judge didn't grant my order of protection. It was almost like she was allowed to put her hands on me and to stop me from moving and block my car and do all these things without any, not even a slap on the wrist as far as this behavior goes. And if I had done those things to her, I would have been held to a different standard in that courtroom if she had filed the same order of protection. But it felt like I was just fighting uphill the whole time.
Explain to me how a Whoop fitness tracker works.
I don't 100% know. You wear it on your wrist and it gives you certain metrics like your heart rate and supposedly calories burned and how you sleep. And
you had one because?
Oh, I was always kind of in a battle of trying to stay healthy. And so sleep had gotten to be a bit of a problem for me, just stress-wise. And so I was trying to do things to help correct my sleep or do better, but also just make sure that I was getting exercise, wasn't being just sedentary and sitting around and trying something.
One of the things that was a big factor in the trial was the fact that there were, I hope I have this right, there were 5 occasions in February
I think there was 3.
But there were occasions in February where the Whoop was not paired with your cell phone.
Right.
And I believe I'm right, those 3 occasions matched up with the mystery bicyclist driving down Hampshire or in front of the bus barn.
Right, the mystery bicyclist.
Why wasn't your phone paired with the Whoop?
That was something that I think, probably upset that information wasn't presented on my behalf on that, because if you go back, if they had pulled, I don't know how far back the history they can go with that thing is, but you would have seen that that thing came unpaired fairly often. And I don't know if if my attorney just didn't look at it or what, but I don't know. That, the Whoop, I don't know. I really don't know. Now, I will tell you, the night that she was killed, I told you I had been sick since Sunday morning. So for probably since Monday night, I had been trying to sleep on the couch, try to prop myself up because I couldn't breathe. So whatever that night was, it would have been, I guess, Wednesday night if she was killed on Thursday. Took some NyQuil, tried to eat something because I really hadn't eaten much that day, and laid on the couch to try and go to sleep. And I succeeded for a little bit, but I woke up and started coughing. And I was coughing so bad that I tried to run into the kitchen because I threw up. And when I threw up, I don't know why I did this. I was almost like concerned about getting it on the floor, and I tried to like catch it in my hands. And it was a mess. So that all happened. I took the whoop off and I went upstairs and I was sitting in the shower because my hair was real long at the time and I had gotten vomit in my hair when I got into the sink. So I went upstairs and I was sitting in the shower, just partly trying to let the steam help me breathe and just to clean off. And when I was sitting in there, at one point I look up because there was a glass door. I was sitting on the bathtub. I poked my head out and I said, "What are you doing, buddy?" And he goes, "I got scared. Can I sleep in your bed?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So he went and laid in my bed. I got up, got out of the shower, dried off, went and laid down with him. And then, I don't remember what time it was, I woke up and realized that the vomit was still downstairs in the kitchen. All the lights were on, and so I went downstairs, cleaned that up, cleaned the whoop off, put it back on, and went back upstairs and laid. So the only person that could testify to my whereabouts were a 5-year-old. And people say, "Oh, that's convenient." I said, "No, it's not. It's not convenient at all." I said, I wish it would have been somebody that was older that could actually say, "Oh yeah, he was there last night." But, waking up in the middle of the night was a fairly often occurrence. So this idea that I would leave my kids alone in the house by themselves at night it actually really upset me, because the whole thing upsets me. Because this idea that I would ride a bike over to her house, that I would leave my kids alone, and for what? To kill her for no reason? I've tried to think and reconcile and explain a number of these things, and I just never come up with any answers.
You didn't testify.
No.
Do you wish you had?
Yes.
Why didn't you?
I was told not to.
Could you have said, "Don't care, doing it anyway"?
I suppose I could have. However,
How did that conversation go with you and Casey? And were there others involved?
a lot of what I was told leading up to the trial was the state doesn't have a case. The state doesn't have a case. The state doesn't have a case. You know, and I said, you don't really understand the legal process until you go through it. I would have assumed that we would have done some sort of prep ahead of time to say, hey, look, if you're going to testify, these are the things I'm going to ask you. These are the things that the prosecution is going to come back and talk to you, or they're going to try to ask you, and this is how we're going to approach this. None of that ever happened. And so the other, I guess, surprising thing to me was, you know, I had to sit through whatever it was, 5 days of the prosecution just making me out to be this horrible person. And going through that experience was horrendous. Like, it was terrible. To sit there and think that people believe that I'm capable of gunning her down was horrible for me. It was horrible for everybody else that had to sit there through it. The day that we were supposed to start our defense, that was when I found out we weren't going to mount one. I had no idea that that was going to happen. Because you go back to the secretary from the school saying, oh, he never showed up early to pick up the kids. That could have been refuted. They found the shell casings they found at the scene. This was in the discovery ahead of the trial, so it was some unusual ammunition, like some, what was it? I don't even know the brand, but you couldn't buy it locally. And so the police had gone back, they had gone to Will Sullivan auction and asked them, if you wanted to get this ammunition, where would you get it? And he said, oh, you have to buy it online. So they went back 7 years on my purchase history, because if you buy, the way I understand, if you buy ammunition online, you have to provide them with a FOID card being an Illinois resident. So They went back 7 years on my purchase history. They went back 7 or 8 years on my shipping history to my house, my dad's house, previous addresses. I had never purchased that brand of ammunition. I didn't have any of it in my basement. I had never purchased that ammunition ever, and that was what they found at the scene. They had access to my text messages, my social media, my email. I would encourage them to go and try and find where I would have purchased whatever that ammunition was. That could have been presented at trial. Having me testify to things like the basketball hoop, that I don't know why that was even made an issue, because I had gone over to my dad's house with a basketball hoop, but I could have testified to that. But there were some other things too. It just, we didn't even mount a defense. And
Were you happy with your defense?
no, not at all. Because I thought we were going to present one. And I had even asked that day of, when she told me that we weren't going to mount a defense, that I said, well, let's, what if we found the missing gun? What if it's somehow still recoverable? And she said, well, I'd rather not have it than have it. And I can't even really tell you how I felt right in that moment. It was just, I felt like I was crushed. I just didn't understand why we weren't doing these things.
What was it like to hear the words guilty?
It was almost like being at the funeral. It was like it was happening to somebody else. Like I was sitting there and I heard the words, but it almost didn't register. Like all I could do was sit there. It wasn't that I didn't feel anything. It was almost like it was too much for me to feel anything. And it, really, I just thought about the boys and what was going to happen to them, what they were going to do now, how can I fight this? What do I do now?
What was it like to hear the words life?
You know how when you talk about too much money, it almost loses its conceptual value? It's been the same thing. It's almost something you can't really comprehend, put a value to. It's not, or you can't quantify it. It's just one day at a time. It's got a certain finality to it.
Were you optimistic when your case was heard by the appellate court?
Yeah, the attorney I had was good, and he was very passionate about the issues and was very communicative, kept me up to date on what was happening, everything. Hope in here could be a dangerous thing, because if you have, because hope can be taken away, and when it does, it's pretty, it's very defeating. So I had to measure my hope, almost that hope for the best but expect the worst, and the worst has come to pass. That I don't, the things that happened in the trial were things that shouldn't have happened, with Adrian, the hearsay, the stuff with the lawyers that was allowed in. But it was like the appellate court just said, well, it wasn't supposed to happen, but we're just going to stick with it anyway. And so it's this idea of what do I do? I mean, these things shouldn't have happened. They're citing evidence in the case, but none was presented on my side when there are things that could have aided my case. and disprove some of the things that the prosecution was stating. And none of that happened. And so all that's in there is what was presented. And it's just, I don't know, maybe depressing is the right word to use in this case.
How hopeful are you that you're going to get a verdict in your favor from the Supreme Court?
Oh, they've already said no. They said that last Thursday. I just found out yesterday morning that same thing as the appellate court. They said these things shouldn't have happened, but we believe we know what happened, so we're just going to leave it as is. And I almost wish that I could say to him, if you feel so confident, these things shouldn't have happened, so give me a new trial that is a fair trial, and then let me present an actual defense. Like, let me present a defense and show you that I didn't do this, that I didn't kill Becky. But that's been, that's not a thing right now.
You talk about hope.
Yeah.
You're here.
Yeah.
This is your home for some time. How do you deal with that hope? How do you deal about looking forward?
You don't really. At least I don't really. I admire, there are some people that I've met in here, some people that I work with in here that have been here for 20, 25, 30, 40, even 40 years. And they still have hope that, they're one day going to get out, that they're going to be able to have a life outside these walls of some sort. And I admire them for being able to persevere that long. Probably because this is still, especially after the news yesterday, it's still new, I guess. I just try to go one day at a time. I can't look too far ahead because I think about my sons and what they've had to endure, and the idea that might never see them again. And I have to stay away from thoughts like that because that's what'll really drag you down.
Have you had a chance to watch any of the television network shows that were done about you?
I didn't want to.
Why not?
Because I knew what they were going to say. I mean, it was just going to be a parrot of what was said in the court and what other people would say, that she was afraid of him or whatever you want to use. So I didn't really see the point. I felt like it was just going to make it worse for me in here if I tried to watch him. And so I didn't. I just avoided it.
Would you ever want a chance to talk to the members of Becky's family? And if so, what would you say to them?
Would I ever want that? I can't really see the point in it, because unless they find the person that actually did this, nothing I say is going to have any impact on them. Not a darn thing. I could sit there on my knees and swear to high holy heaven that I had nothing to do with this, and they wouldn't believe me anyway. So why put them through that? For them, it's me being in here as some sort of, it's justice for them because they think I did it. But there'd be no point in me trying to talk to them.
Have you talked to your boys since you were arrested? Have you seen the boys since your arrest?
No, I have not. I'm not allowed to. So for a long time, I wrote them letters that I gave to my mom to hold on to, that, maybe when they turn 18, they'll want to read them. But one of the worst things about all of this is that I wouldn't be stunned if they just hate me. And I guess considering where I am and undoubtedly what they've been told, can't blame them. I can't blame them if they feel that way, because what else do they have to go on? Even if they could come down here, I don't know that I want them to see me like this. You know, when they were born, and the first time I got to hold each of them, I never prayed for them to be rich or famous or the valedictorian or anything like that. The prayer I said for each of them was always just God, please let them be happy. Please let them be healthy. Please let them be surrounded by people that love them. Please let them have confidence, care about other people, be curious, follow their passions. You know, it was the things that I wanted for them to just have a happy life. And it's the only thing I pray for anymore. You know, I was praying for a while to get this fixed, to be able to have another day in court, to be able to show people that I didn't do this. And I've given up on those prayers. So all I do is, it's the only thing I say at night before I go to bed is just that I hope they're okay.
Do you, obviously you'd like a new trial.
Yeah.
What is your hope? Do you think you'll ever get one?
You know,
And how would it be different if you got one?
yeah. You know, I don't know that I can hope anymore. I can do things that I'm able to do within the legal system, but I've just been let down so many times. It's almost like I don't want to hope anymore, because I don't want to be let down again. As far as in a new trial, we've talked about some of the things, the ammunition, the testimony from other people, if the hearsay wasn't allowed in, because again, I can't think of anything to justify her saying those things. The lawyer testimony, the attorney-client privilege stuff. There are certain things I don't have an explanation for. All I can do is testify to what I know. Same as I've done here, just this is what I know, this is what happened to me, this is where I was, and you know, if the outcome were the same, I'd just realize that there's something that's got it out for me. What am I going to do, argue about it at that point?
Do we cover everything?
I don't know, man. It's, you know, a lot of the stuff at trial, you know, they brought up the issue with my dad. Mm-hmm. And they also brought up money being an issue, which wasn't the case. I don't know, it's tough to think about it all at this point. I don't know if I told you anything that was revolutionary or unexpected or whatever. It's
No,
just,
not really.
Yeah.
No.
So I said it. That's some of my piece. I'm sure I'll get back to my cell and there will be other things that I'll think of, and man, I wish I would have said that, or I wish I would have told him about this, but he asked about a couple of the internet searches. The only thing I can tell you about those is none of them were done with any criminal intent. You know, like that one about opening a door with a crowbar. Mm-hmm. My garage door didn't have a key, and I had to lock it. I had to start locking it after I went out to my car 2 mornings, like within a week, and that door was open. And my neighbor to the, what would be to the east of me had said that, or no, I'm sorry, the multi-unit building to the west of me, They had had a break-in last summer where somebody broke into their house in broad daylight. And so I thought, great, somebody's coming around, getting in my garage, trying to look at stuff. Those garage doors that I had, the openers, when you had a big temperature fluctuation, whether it got real cold or real hot, they wouldn't open sometimes. So I had that one morning. The garage doors wouldn't open, the door was locked. And I'm like, it was a Saturday, so I didn't want to call a locksmith, but I needed something out of the garage. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, can I do this without messing up the door? And I didn't even mess with it. But that's some of that stuff. It's a real innocuous explanation as far as why I looked it up. And, you asked about the silencer one. Mm-hmm. It wasn't how to use one. It was how to build one.
Yeah, okay.
What was I watching? I was watching a show about something with a silencer. Or no, I remember what it was. It was there was a news story about a guy out east who had tried to use a potato as a pistol silencer and like blew the potato off when he tried to do whatever he was doing and either injured somebody, I don't know what it was. It was one of those things I thought, like, that's really stupid. Like, wow, great homemade pistol silencer. And I looked it up because I thought, this would be funny to see what other people have come up with. And I looked at it, I was on there for like 2 minutes, and I realized, like, this is dumb, and just turned it off or just went to something else. But again, it was something that was used against me, even though I looked at it almost out of humor because of what that guy had done. That's the way it goes. So I don't know, man. I don't know. That's where we're at. I know that the reaction to this is going to be more negative than positive. I do. And people say I'm lying and I'm making stuff up, and it is what it is, I guess. But all I've got left is the truth. Lying about this stuff doesn't serve me any. Lying about this doesn't change anything. The fact that I'm still here, it's not like somebody's going to see it and go, oh, look at that. Let's let him out of there. So I just had to, I don't know, maybe you just call it getting it off my chest. So.
Muddy River News. Our home, our news.